Paul proclaimed himself to be an apostle. And so you got Christians and you got some misguided Hebrew Israelites to take him to be a legitimate apostle, but he was not. He was not. Paul never met Joshua. Paul was a traitor to the black Hebrew Israelite nation. He was a backslidden rebel from the Judaic faith. He left the Judaic faith to start his own Christian faith. The religion which is today known as modern day Christianity. Paul is the founder of modern day Christianity. Paul anointed himself to be an apostle to white folks, not to the Jews. Paul was an apostle to the Gentiles. And he taught his own version of Joshua the Messiah. He taught his own made up version, a version that would appeal to the pagans. What Paul did, again, what he did was he mixed Gentile paganism with the Messianic Judaic faith. That's what he did. And he offered it to the Gentiles. He offered it to white people. And he taught his own version of the Messiah. He deviated and turned away from the legitimate Judaic apostles of North Africa and Asia. And he spread his own version of the Messiah. He spread his own doctrine of the Messiah throughout Europe because only white folks would accept it. He concocted, he made up the story of this meeting. Joshua is resurrected. This story about the Damascus Road. This episode where he meets Joshua on the Damascus Road. It's all a bold-faced lie. Paul made up the whole cotton-picking story. This encounter with the resurrected Messiah was made up by Paul in order to promote his own false doctrine. Then he goes further to the extreme. He goes so far as to blaspheme the Torah. He calls the Torah, he calls the law a curse. Then he tells the few Jews that remained with him, he told them they could practice the Torah if they wanted to, if they wished to, but that it only showed their lack of faith in the Messiah. He considered Torah observant Jews to be weak in faith. And he taught his Gentile followers. He taught them to bear with the Jews, pity the Jews. Don't despise the Jews that were with him. Be patient with them. Be patient with these Torah observant Jews until they are converted. Until they are converted to the Christian faith. Once they are converted to the Christian verse, once they are converted to the Christian faith, once they are converted to Christianity, then they will no longer need a schoolmaster. They'll no longer need the law. They are no longer bound, enslaved, but freed from the burden of the accursed law. That's exactly what Paul taught. Paul taught his followers, yes, respect the teachings of the Judaic law. But he taught that the Judaic law is now obsolete. It's absolutely unnecessary to obey. It was only a schoolmaster. to bring them to the Messiah. This is what Paul taught. At first, Peter stood strong against the deviations of Paul. And Peter opposed Paul. But eventually, Paul got the best of Peter. Peter let Paul bully him into submitting to the Pauline doctrine. Peter, being a bishop in Rome, he was under a lot of pressure by the rapidly growing white Christian population. They forced him to confirm to the doctrine the gospel of Paul. Because once the Gentiles became the dominant force within the European churches of Paul, they began to persecute the Messianic Jews. And they even charged them with the heresy of Judaism. Judaizing, they call it. Judaizing. You know, Judaizing, it soon became a code word for uprising, rebellion, Judaizing, rioting, riotous living. The Jews became suspect of uprising, rebelling, Judaizing. They were accused of Judaizing if they refused to worship Yahshua as deity, fully God, fully man. They were accused of Judaizing if they refused to accept the Immaculate Conception, the virgin birth, Mary as the mother of God. They were accused of Judaizing if they refused to believe in the bodily resurrection from the dead of the Messiah, resurrected unto immortality or deity. They were accused of Judaizing if they were caught practicing circumcision. They were accused of Judaizing if they were caught keeping the cleanliness laws, the hygiene laws, or practicing polygamy, or any of the Hebraic traditions. They were accused of Judaizing if they were caught observing the seventh-day Sabbath and not Sundays. They were accused of Judaizing if they were caught observing Judaic holy days, if they adhered to dietary laws of the Judaic faith, if they were caught advocating in any way the Old Testament Judaic faith. They were charged with the heresy of Judaizing, rebelling, uprising. Paul, with the support of these Gentiles, followers of Rome, who had actually developed into a church militant, the church militant, called the Roman Knights of the Roman Knights of the Christian faith, they call it. The Roman Knights of the Christian faith. They were like your modern day Christian Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. The modern Knights of the Ku Klux Klan was modeled upon the Knights Templars, the Roman Knights of the Christian Empire. These militants from Rome began to put pressure on the Messianic Jews, and many of the Messianic Jews had to flee into Africa and Asia, North Africa and Asia. So Peter, being the bishop of Rome, was forced to comply with Paul. No. Peter could have actually gotten the upper hand of Paul had it not been for the backing of the white folks up in Rome. Yep. Strange as it may sound, the first pope was a black Hebrew Israelite, Paul. Paul was the first pope. Peter, after he finally sold out to Paul and betrayed James, the brother of Joshua, who was the legitimate leader of the movement back up in North Africa, Jerusalem, the Jerusalem church. He was the head of the Jerusalem church, they were at odds with the Church of Rome. But Peter finally submitted. In the end, he submitted to Paul, and he became the second pope of Rome. And there were other black popes of Rome. There were other black popes of Rome. So the Messianic Jews did not agree with Peter and Paul. They did not agree with Peter and Paul. Paul's claim to be an apostle of the resurrected Messiah was totally rejected by the Messianic Jews of Africa and Asia. Paul and Peter only had the support of the white folks in Rome. The Jesus that Paul taught was a different Jesus, a Yeshua, a totally different Yeshua. There's a difference between the Yeshua of Paul and the Yeshua, the historical Yeshua. Two totally different entities. Two totally different entities. You have the Yeshua of Paul, and you have the Yeshua of Paul is the Yeshua of faith, of the Pauline faith, of the Christian faith. And you have the historical Yeshua, who was a prophet. Paul, in order to build up a following and to appeal to the pagan tendencies of the heathen, he created his own Yeshua. He created a Yeshua that would appeal to the heathen masses of pagan Rome. The Gentiles were eager to worship Paul's resurrected Messiah as a deity, as they had always sought to worship demigods. They've always sought out demigods to worship. They just didn't want to be bound by any moral laws. They just didn't want to be bound by any laws at all, any kind of laws. They could accept Paul's